You're listening to the After Dark podcast with NT Paranormal. Nothing normal about it.
Hey everybody, welcome back. We are sticking to a schedule for a change. This is podcast number 2 in a row. Actually, it's like 3 in a row because we said we were going to do bi-weekly. But yay, we're back and we're going to talk about actual stuff and things. Like I've been doing this thing where I plan the podcast now. And we're going to see how that works. I feel like the last one worked out. How do you feel about that?
Sure.
Yeah. How are you doing?
Okay.
No, you're not. So we're talking about today. I actually put a bunch of research in over the oh God, man, that mic is like super hot. What is going on with that? Okay, that's a little bit better. Does that sound better? Okay. What?
Sure.
So I actually put in a bunch of research on this one because I decided I was going to go with like questions that we had been asked before. And like one of the things that we kind of always talk about on our investigations, but we haven't really shown anything with it, is like emotions. So I think last episode we actually talked about how we're trying to do better on our investigations about talking about what our emotional state is like going into it, while we're in the investigation, afterwards, because even though it's not necessarily paranormal evidence, like we don't feel like our emotions actually influence anything that's going on, well, in that way, so to speak. But we feel like it's important to the investigation. For a long time, I mean, even now, we're kind of like stoic because like we'll go in and we feel like it's silly to talk about like being scared or nervous or anything like that. How did that start?
I don't think it's silly to talk about being scared or being nervous. I think it's silly to be like, oh, I have a feeling. I have a feeling something's going to happen. That's stupid.
Well, why is it stupid?
And I think we
though?
equated the two because people can't sense ghosts. That's not a thing.
Some people can say they can sense ghosts.
They can say it all day.
Okay. Well,
I can say I'm a rocket scientist.
But we cannot. We cannot. And it's not that part of it isn't really valid for the type of research that we're trying to do. Like we're trying to get physical evidence, and there's no way to really prove that. I mean, I guess you could a little bit through like statistics, like if somebody was 95% right all the time, but hardly anybody is. Even the people I would even personally think are a little bit credible, it's just not something you can put down like as science, like in your science paper. I can't say, well, Eli felt like there was a ghost in the room, so there was a ghost in the room. That's not how it works. Like we're looking for objective evidence that we can document. So for a long time, like I remember when we were first going out and I'd get like really spooked and I would verbalize that quite a bit. I'd be like,
was it the merciless mocking that turned you off from saying how you felt?
Possibly.
Okay.
It might have been that.
Maybe.
Because I don't know. We just got in the habit where we just weren't saying anything. And for a while, I was just kind of trying to be quiet because I didn't want to contaminate evidence like by talking through it. But no, we kind of came around to the idea that it is important to document your emotions, even if it kind of puts like a little bit of shade over what's going on, because your emotional state while you're investigating is also important because there could be links and stuff there. In fact, we've talked about doing like a bigger study, like surveys and things like that with like bigger groups and our own group, and we hadn't quite got around to it. So I've actually come up with those forms, and for the investigation we're doing in 3 weeks with the volunteers, we're going to make them fill out the forms, the experience forms and the after forms. And then if we have time, we're also going to do the EEG study, which that'll play into this a lot. So, like, I guess I'll just start from the top. So I ordered these in a way that makes a great story arc for the podcast. But these are questions we've been asked. I might have jazzed them up a little bit just to make it so we could give a more thorough answer. But you've often talked about fear and its influence over perception, as well as the possibility that it can fuel paranormal events. So what is fear and what is its purpose, like biologically? Like, what is the purpose of fear? Like, are emotions just things your body does, but does it serve like some kind of need? Like, does happiness and joy serve a need?
Don't you have a response written on that paper? Fear keeps you from doing dumb stuff.
Fear is defined as an unpleasant feeling triggered by the perception of danger, real or imagined. Fear is a natural, powerful, and primitive human emotion. It involves a universal biochemical response as well as a high individual emotional response. Fear alerts us to the presence of danger or the threat of harm, whether that danger is physical or psychological. Sometimes fear stems from real threats, but it can also originate from imagined dangers. Fear can also be a symptom of some mental health conditions, including panic disorder, social anxiety disorder, phobias, post-traumatic stress disorder. Fear is composed of two primary reactions to some type of perceived threat, biochemical and emotional. So to define what fear is, in really emotions in general, is that it's like an emotional response, like a mental response to some kind of stimuli. Fear is going to be the response to danger. And then there's also a second component where there's a biological response. So based on that emotion and how your brain interprets that emotion, it does different things to your body, releases different kinds of chemicals into your body to make it operate different, puts it into that fight or flight mode, things like that. And that is important to our study. Like one of the reasons we are so engrossed in, well, was the person afraid or anxious or things like that during the events that they experienced, because it can alter your perception of reality around you. It can make you think things are happening that aren't happening, or the argument could be made that you're hyper aware, because I think we've talked about before that, it does things to your body to make you hyper aware. It's the I'm feeling nauseous. Oh my God, was there a sick person who died in here? Yeah. Roundabout. That
was like a really old comment. You're way behind the ball.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're not reading off comments or letting me know that there's comments.
There's comments.
You're completely failing at your job.
There's comments.
Oh, okay. Shoot, I'm not even seeing all the comments. What would you think? Do you think fear in that anxiety-induced state would make you more perceptually accurate or less, and why? Because you know a ton about biology. It does a bunch of different things to your body.
Way to throw me under the bus. Both. It depends. Is the fear useful? Like if you're sitting in a room and you're all hyped up, it's gonna be like a panic attack where it has no use. It's gonna make you see stuff and feel stuff that isn't there. Now, are you running from a mountain lion? It's useful. You're probably more aware of your surroundings as opposed to just imagining stuff.
As far as the biological response, the things it does to your body, fear is a natural emotion. It's a survival mechanism. It's immediately going to trigger your hippocampus. What are you?
Catherine said that stuff drives me bananas. Ghost Adventures has ruined that for me. No, Nick, no person died here. You just have IBS.
I think every paranormal investigator probably has IBS. There's just a whole lot of silent farting going on during investigations. Everybody I've ever investigated with, they're just like, why is your stomach so loud all the time? Including mine. What?
because we're like, oh, we're going to go out and do something tonight. Let's go eat a bunch of junk food.
That's probably it. Staying up really late and eating junk food.
Yeah.
Because
energy, and Monster's chugging Monster energy drinks. That probably isn't good for your stomach.
probably not. A couple of theories out there is that emotional energy can fuel a paranormal event, because ghosts or whatever are supposed to need energy in order to manifest. So one theory is that if you're hyped up, if you're afraid, or you're joyful, or anxious, or any of the above, but you have like an overabundance of it, like you're amped, that spirits can manifest using that energy. But like, kind of one of the debates on that is, does that actually create any kind of measurable energy? But that's the first argument for that is, okay, if you're amped, yeah, you're amped, and you can maybe be making mistakes, but it could be actually fueling a paranormal event. Another argument could be is that in these fear states, your biological response, because of what fear does, what the amygdala and the hippocampus do to your body, you could be hyper aware of things that are already there. So you become more sensitive, or more able to interact with things that are actually there. And then the third camp would be that since you're in that fear state, you're not really, or you're in that emotional state, you're not really in your right mind, and you can make mistakes. You can hear things that aren't there, see things that aren't there, misinterpret the results of what's actually going on. So what I wanted to do was kind of address like all three of those camps, because they're all, I think, valid like directions of thinking for all of it, but I wanted to kind of address the science behind all three things. So I guess the first stop on this adventure is, what does fear do to the body? So in all my neuroscience research that I did on the Googles, because I'm totally a Dr. Google neuroscientist, I found out what fear does. And I kind of already knew some of this stuff, but I had to take a refresher because I wanted to make sure I had it right for this. But it dumps a shit ton of dopamine into your body immediately. If your brain feels like, oh, there's a sound, or there's something you see moving in the bushes or something like that, it goes, hey, it's time to go into defense mode, basically. And so a switch kicks on. And so what happens is first your starts with an A. I misspelled it the other day.
Amygdala?
Yeah, first your amygdala triggers a whole bunch of chemicals to get dumped into your body. That's adrenaline, dopamine. I'm sure I have a list of chemicals somewhere, but I can't see it. It does that. And then it also sends signals to your hippocampus, where your hippocampus has to make a decision on whether or not this is a real threat or an imaginary threat. So you get a shit ton of adrenaline just dumped into your body. It makes your heart beat faster. It shuts off your need to use the restroom. So it just completely makes it to, it shuts off your bladder, shuts off your bowels, all digestive stuff stops, because that's not important. It's kind of like in Star Trek when they're like, hey, divert all the power to the shields, sort of thing. It changes the way you see. You go into almost like a tunnel vision, like your distance vision gets really, really acute. But your up close vision sucks. Like your peripheral vision gets real blurry. So that could not be good, if you're investigating like in a building or something like that. Your night vision gets a lot better. Basically what happens is your pupils dilate, so you can see really far. You can see in dimmer light. You almost get these like cool superpowers. Your hearing gets kind of screwed up a little bit in that your brain stops recognizing words and logic, and it starts just trying to hyper focus on danger sounds. Sorry, I was looking. You keep looking down like there's comments, but there's not comments.
I have to look to see if there
I know, but the way you were doing it was
with my eyes.
It was wigging me out, man. I think I'm having a fear reaction to you. You're freaking me out. So your body is getting ready to either fight something off. Your short-term memory just completely checks out. Like that part of your brain just stops working entirely. Everything is processed through the hippocampus and in different parts of your brain that normally would be processing functions. So it's like another driver just like gets in the seat. So that gives you some advantages. It gives you some disadvantages. One, you can't remember things clearly. It's not necessarily that you wouldn't notice something in the moment more clearly. It might open you up to that, but you wouldn't remember the chain of events quite so clearly. Like, if you've ever been panicked, the way you're remembering it isn't quite the way it might have happened. That's why like a third party or somebody standing by when like something crazy happens, it probably can remember the chain of events better than you can. The vision thing kind of screws some stuff up. Yeah, you can see better in the dark. You may not always be investigating in the dark. But a lot of times the things you're looking at are more up close, and that's precisely the vision that gets screwed up. So those are kind of the things that are going on. One of the interesting things that I ran across was I did a bunch of research into, is emotional energy measurable? Because like everything in your body, it's like synapses.
Sure.
Which is
We're guessing.
It's the electrical impulses in your brain. And I mean, so logically anything that your body does produces some kind of energy. Like that makes sense because you do have like a small electromagnetic field. I mean, it's almost unmeasurable. With like regular devices. I mean, it almost only shows up on EEGs, or fMRIs, things like that, like very, very special tools. Your body does produce, and I mean, and like you produce thermal energy, heat. Your body does produce energy, but the question is do emotions produce some kind of measurable output that could then be where you're like used as a battery? And basically what I looked into is there was this, my first avenue of checking this out took me down this one road. There's this PhD, David Hawkins. He did a bunch of studies on this. He did this thing about like mapping the consciousness, and supposedly the way it was worded is that he proved emotions do have energy, and he could like log the level. They're called log levels. As a matter of fact, I wrote it down. It's sorry, I want to get it right. It's called logarithmic levels. And the way he was doing this was like he would ask you questions, get you to experience certain emotions or whatever, and he would use kinesiology to like test it, because what he found is that like if you're feeling joy, or if you hear like truthfulness or things like that, your muscles behave a certain way. Like your brain's able to like decode it, and it like translates into how much resistance you can put in a thing. Like, it's so weird.
That doesn't sound like science.
It doesn't.
It sounds like being a chiropractor.
It does.
You know, some people that think they're sensitive to gluten, they're like, oh yeah, I went to the what do you call it? The holistic doctor or whatever. And they put bread in my hand and then tried to push down on my hand, and my hand went down when I was holding the bread. So I'm sensitive to that's exactly what this sounds
I know.
like.
Okay. So that's exactly what I was thinking when I was like, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I ended up going down like the wrong side of Google. And then I was
Kinesiology is just like movement.
right.
Julie asked what is kinesiology. Just like,
Oh, yeah. Well, anyway, it has to do with that.
I put bread in their hand, and when I pushed it down, it went down. So they're allergic to gluten.
So when I was initially reading this thing, that's what I came up with, and I was like, "Oh no, this is
There was a
terrible."
presence in the room, and their arm went down. Therefore, there's a ghost, and they're allergic to ghosts.
Apparently, there was more to the study that like I wasn't getting, where there was actually some science behind it, and I didn't understand it. But then I didn't even but at the end of it, I didn't really like how it went. These like logarithmic levels are for like on this map of the consciousness, and you have like so many points depending on how many emotions, like there's 37 human emotions, and depending on like how you score in it or whatever, puts you up to like different levels. It's really crazy. There's this book, I bought it. It's called Power versus Force. When I finish reading it, I will check back in. But that's where that line of questioning took me initially. And I was like, this isn't really answering my question, because what I was looking for was, could somebody measure an output of energy from people having different types? Fear produces 2.6 joules of energy, and happiness produces 3.6 kilohertz of energy.
Isn't this the plot of Monsters, Inc.?
Yeah, that's
okay.
That's exactly where. Yeah,
there's a ghost holding bread, and they're allergic to
gluten ghost, a wheat ghost,
the best ghost. But yeah, you're basically describing the plot of Monsters.
Okay,
Inc.
so we'll call this the Monsters Inc. theory. From now on, we'll call this Sully's theorem. That's what we'll go with. And I think it's a valid form of thinking, but I was having so much trouble finding somebody that had done any kind of like research from the observational end that had done anything. And then I finally found it. I didn't find there was a bunch of specific studies done by UCLA, Harvard, where they hooked people up to EEGs, which was our original idea. And I was like, oh, okay, finally somebody's like talking some sense. But the David Hawkins thing, like it's like a peer reviewed paper, so I need to go back and read it, but I wasn't understanding. I was like, that makes no sense to me at all. And I just need people to know that this exists, and we need to look into it further. It needs to be investigated because it sounds just bananas. The UCLA study, however, what they were doing is they did exactly what you would think. They put people up in a brain scanner, and they measured their brainwave output as responding to like different stimuli. Like they'd be like, "Ooh, you're scared," and they'd be like, "Oh," and it would make a thing happen, and they'd be like, "Okay, you're calm now," and then make like another thing happen. That's how I imagine that study goes. I think really what they're doing is they put them in the EEG and they make them watch like movies that do different things. What?
Julie's comment.
Oh, okay. I
have no idea. I'm sure there's a study for that.
Laughter versus scream energy.
Oh no! So an orgasm produces how much energy? That was the.
Oh, that's in the UCLA study.
Is it?
Yeah, you got to look that up. So things I learned, because I'm not a neuroscientist, but I am like an engineer, so I was like, oh, okay. It was explained that brain waves are electrical impulses that exist in certain frequencies. So, like your alpha waves, they exist between 8 and 12 hertz of energy, and then they can produce however many K units for it. Beta waves, they exist between 13 and 38 hertz. Delta, it's really, really slow. Like it's hertz. It's based on the waves. So delta waves are between 1 and 4. Those were only recently discovered, by the way. Theta waves are between 4 and 8 hertz. Those were previously thought to be the slowest waves. And gamma is anything above 35 hertz up to like 100. And those are like really erratic. And it turns out all those different waves are connected to different emotions, emotional states, states of thinking, and then different combinations of like how they read out is connected to different things. So like
I can't take anything with the Greek alphabet seriously because in my mind, just this track runs. I'm glad I'm a beta. You know.
What are we talking about?
Brave New World. Never mind.
What? You're just breathing. You use your
You don't
words.
have that book stuck in your brain from like high school English, Brave New World, where they run the tracks under the kids' beds. Like, I'm glad I'm a beta.
Never read it. Just never read it. I know what it is, but I never read it, so I don't get your geeky ass reference. So anyway, through looking at people's alpha waves, you can see how much energy their brain is outputting in specific electrical output. So to just answer the question, do emotions create energy? The answer is yes. They output energy. They don't necessarily create energy, like, because energy has to come from somewhere. So it's actually your body is producing it as potential energy, and then your brain executes it as a sort of kinetic energy in the form of electrical impulses and synapses. But it is at very low. It's like below 100 hertz and like below 100K units sort of thing. So you could not like harness that brain power into a battery to power, say, like...
How much energy does a ghost need to... Man, it's like, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? Like, it's just so... ridiculous.
Well, it's a good question because you can put like a battery in a room, right? Like 400 volt, 120 volts or whatever, and like nothing will happen. And then people will be like, "Oh, your emotional energy can feel the thing," and it'll make like a chair go across the room. But one does not compare to the other because you are measurably not putting out as much energy as, you know, a potential battery. But it might be the act of that power being used during the time. Does that make sense? Like the difference between potential and kinetic energy?
It's that whole, okay, so zombies appear. Okay.
Okay.
Are they disease zombies? Are they radiation zombies? Like, it's a ghost. Is it... what kind of ghost is it? Is it a science ghost? Does it have to follow the laws of science, or is it a magic ghost? In which case, all of this is...
Well, yeah, but our point is that magic and everything has to exist within physics somehow. Like,
Does it? It's magic.
Okay, fine. Then just ghosts are a thing. We hunt ghosts now. Ghosts are magic. Up is down. Down is up. Dogs and cats living together in harmony. It's just total fucking anarchy. What do you want from me? This is what we do.
How much energy or impulse does it take to power a human muscle to move? I don't know.
Probably like
18 bytes. Wait.
two
Wrong measurement?
2 bits. I don't.
A gram?
Well, I mean, like if you look at a tens unit puts out so much. That's all powered off of, you know, 2 AAA batteries, which that's just 3 volts.
Well, so like
at the max it's going to put out is 3 volts. So you don't
throw someone in a room and scare them, but you could get the same result from turning on a tens unit in a room.
Well, as far as muscle movement, but I'm talking about
not muscle. I mean, like, let's say a ghost is fueled by energy. Mm-hmm. Then this emotional energy you're putting forth is never going to compare to the amount of electricity we just dump into the air constantly. So it seems like it wouldn't change things. It wouldn't make enough impact to do anything.
Or it shouldn't. And that's where my thought goes with it is, so like the first question I was trying to answer is emotional energy measurable in any way as a form of energy?
Yes.
The answer is yes. It turns out, but not by very much. Like you have to have a tiny increments. Like it's nothing compared to like what you could just provide by dumping a toaster in a bathtub. It's so if emotional energy is a component or a key component to the whole thing, then it doesn't have to do with the measurable output of that energy. It has to be another aspect of it, because the energy isn't actually there. Like it's not the way you're thinking, or not the way people would think, because they think like, oh, this will charge it, just like some investigations we go on where we have like a battery drain or something like that. It is a much more plentiful source of energy than anything that your body can actually produce, unless it's going off of thermal energy, which you have 98.6 degrees of it, but we haven't observed people's body temperature suddenly dropping or anything like that. So if it does have anything to do with emotions, it's another component of it. In my head, that I would think that. But what I thought was really cool is you could look at people's brainwave output. Oh, I didn't talk about what all the different waves do. So like the alpha waves, those are typically associated with like being happy, joyful, positive, things like that. So like if you're in a good mood and your body's running right and you're not in a lot of pain and things like that, your alpha waves are going to be really strong. You're going to have a high 8 to 12 hertz output. And that will be the main type of energy doing. That'll be really strong. Beta waves are anger, anxiety, and alertness. Those are tied to that part of the brain. And really these waves are kind of tied to what part of the brain is being like the most active. Like you're putting these all out at the same time, but some will be stronger than others in different hertz, right? So if you're having anxiety, anger, alertness, things like that, your beta waves will be really high. But there's like different combinations. So if your alpha waves are low and your beta waves are high, you'll have like depression, anxiety disorders, things like that. If you have high beta and high alpha waves like at the same time, all those like emotions are there, but they're more like balanced. Like you have more control over them, but you will tend to be like more reactive at that time. Things like that. Theta waves tend to get stronger when you're having dreaming or like focusing, meditation, like deep thought, just kind of like, and those are the really low level waves. And that'll be like your mind kind of drifting around like when you meditate. Gamma waves are the really high ones that go 35 and up. Those only usually appear if you're actively like problem solving. So if you're using like your conscious mind to like solve a puzzle or think your way through something, or if they go really high if you lie. It's gamma waves are a really good lie detector, or a really good component in lie detection. Just because your gamma waves are high doesn't mean you're lying, but it means you're thinking through the process less than recalling something. And then, like I said before, delta waves were only like recently discovered. And these are such low waves that they only happen in like super, super deep sleep. Little babies, they detect delta waves in babies. And in adults, if you have really strong delta waves, a lot of times it can actually signify like some learning disabilities and things like that. They still don't know a ton about it yet. So I'm really interested. So I added that to like our experiments where we're going to do an EEG before the investigations. And then with our new experiment, what we do is if somebody has some kind of event that happens, basically like they call in to report it like we would, hey, I just, saw something run across the room, or I felt something touch me or something like that. We're going to go through, that experience or whatever. And then we're immediately going to like go back to home base, and we're going to fill out a form, and it's got 37 emotions on it. So you're ranking those before we do the investigation. You're ranking them in the middle, and then we also hook you up to an EEG at the time to see what your brainwave output is immediately after that. And then, of course, we do one at the end of the investigation. And then if we log enough of these, the hope is that possibly we see some kind of correlation or some kind of trend with different types of experiences or things like that. I'm actually really excited about it, but your face is really off-putting, and I don't know how to express it.
Catherine says, what if we're like the Matrix and we're all just ghost batteries?
I mean, it's possible, but the human body is just really crap at producing energy.
We're barely keeping ourselves running.
It really is like a medical mystery, like how we just keep like operating. Like, how does your heart keep beating? Yeah, like we produce energy, we produce these like electrical impulses, but it's like such a low frequency. It's not even like a carrier wave. Like if I get angry and you're holding like an EMF detector or any kind of like energy output detection device, it's not going to make it go off. Yet some people, when they get angry, break all the light bulbs in their house.
That's not a thing.
I thought that's what you used to do.
No, I would constantly go in rooms, flips on the light switch, and the light bulbs would burn out. I knew of delta waves back in 1976. I had done a science fair project on biofeedback.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so maybe I worded it bad. It's not like they just recently discovered
like in
them.
geological terms?
Yeah, but they have only recently started to go into like what they mean or whatever. Also, I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm going off this paper I read. No,
I've been laboring under the impression you were a neuroscientist this whole time. Shook.
This was all from 2 weeks worth of research into this. Nonetheless, I did find out that the human body is pretty crap at producing energy. Mainly because you have to keep shoving food into it to make it happen.
What are you doing?
I was looking at the neuroscience of emotion notes I made. Based on neural circuitry, our emotional brain responds faster to incoming information or stimuli than our analytical brain does. Oh, that's talking about like how fear works. The emotional brain has more neural circuits connecting to the analytical brain than the analytical brain has connecting to the emotional brain. Basically what it was saying, this was part of it, was so you're real. This sounds like a no duh moment, but you're real emotional, like when you're afraid and things like that happening. But the reason is that fear, that biological response, overrides the logic centers of your brain. So your entire brain is wired to be run by emotion, while only a portion of your brain is wired to be run by logic, like data that comes in. So
I get so frustrated when I'm like in a debate with someone and they're like, you're using feelings, not logic. Oh, stop it. We're all humans. We're all just big bags of emotion. Just deal with it.
Yeah, like you're
We're just 99% feelings. That's
it's
1% food.
It is a balance, and then your hippocampus has to decide, is like, okay, do we use logic in this situation, or do we just let total anarchy happen and roll with it? And it turns out just total anarchy wins out like 99% of the time. Because
considering how well organized, structured, and how well everything's running in our world right now, I'm amazed at what you're saying.
I mean, but there's there is that component of emotional energy on the basis of survival, the experience of stress and feelings of worry, fear, anger. They all take priority over feelings of happiness and peace. So your brain is wired for panic. So people that can remain like just totally calm in like panicky situations are actually the rarity. You know, and you can train yourself to be better at it, but there's the majority of people are gonna panic because that biologically that is just how we are wired.
And Julie says, so we aren't that far from primitive men when it comes to emotional response to fear.
No, and it's that fear that helped. It's an evolutionary trait. It kept us alive.
Our main problem now is lack of reasonable fear. Like there's not enough stuff that naturally scares us anymore. Like we're not being predated upon, so we have anxiety now. You're welcome. Yeah, Catherine says nurses, as in people who, calm when panicking situations arise.
And so I was roundabout answering it. So does fear and other emotions really produce energy that can be fed off of? And the simple answer is yes. It just turns out it's not a lot. It's not a lot of measurable energy. The thing I got here was what we think of emotions is the experience of energy moving through the body. This generally felt as sensations of contractions, such as tension or expansion, such as calm. The Latin derivative of the word emotion, emotere, literally means energy in motion. In itself, emotional energy is neutral. David Hawkins proved that emotions have measurable energy and can either foster or negate actual cell life. Oh, this was the cool part of his study and why I want to keep reading it. So part of his study was that different types of emotions, depending on the emotional output that they have, actually have more of an internal influence. So it turns out some of that stuff that's wired to your brain can determine the cellular growth of your body and the cellular death. Cellular. No.
What's cellular?
It's with a G. Obviously.
Okay.
Are you not down?
Not at all.
You understand what I'm saying, though, right?
Sure.
So they did a bunch of experiments, like people that were and I'm paraphrasing, I don't think these were the actual results, but he found out happy people and sad people grow and die like at different rates, or heal and sustain damage at different rates, things like that. So he proved scientifically that like if you're in a better mood, you will get well faster because your white blood cells have a longer cell life. Your red blood cells operate better or whatever.
Lots of studies about positive thinking in cancer patients. But anyway, aside from the point.
I don't think it goes to the extent that happiness will cure your cancer.
Not cure it, but help along the treatments, make them more beneficial. And even if it's just a slight benefit, really, when you're dying of cancer, any little bit helps.
Hawkins' most interesting finding was that cells actually died when the log level was below 200, where the emotions of scorn, hate, anxiety, shame, regret, despair, blame, and humiliation reside. So it's key to regulate and manage our emotional state, not just for overall well-being and that of those around us, but also for physical health. So he did some kind of cell study. So there was more than just the kinesiology that was in there. Because I read like the first part of the paper, and he's like, he was trying to explain to dumb people, and I was like, I'm dumb people, and he's like, if you hold your arm out and you tell somebody you're going to push down on it, and you do like it should like lock or whatever. But then if like you berate them and then you tell them the same thing and you do it, you'll get like a different response. But then if you're nice to them or whatever, and it had something to do, I was missing like almost the whole point of the first part of that paper because I was just like, this guy's a witch doctor. But he was well respected. I mean, it was a peer-reviewed paper, and they were like, that's a thing. And so I need to look into it. He apparently is one of the first doctors that was looking into kinesiology. And it has something to do with, like, emotional state or something like that. And he did this, like, big map of the consciousness with, like, log levels. So if you experience, like, all these low-level things or whatever, then it puts points down here. And then if you it all adds together and you can like transcend. Like it gets so weird and hard to follow, but there's science in there somewhere. It wasn't like clicking with me. I did understand the study about like the brain waves and what the electrical output of the brain was in response to emotions. I got that. I misquoted the delta waves thing. It's not that they didn't know delta waves existed. They just didn't know that they were really like functional or connected to anything, I think was the problem, because it's like between 1 and 4 hertz. Like it's the absolute like lowest you can go. So like if you're functioning in that area, like something's wrong. I heard fear heightens the senses. If that's true, wouldn't this prevent false positives and make you more attuned to an experience as it's happening? Fear's been shown to create biological changes in the body that will heighten senses to prepare for danger, to deal with perceived threats. People often refer to psychological changes that occur, physiological changes that occur when experiencing fear in a fight or flight response. Overall, as the name suggests, the changes prepare the animal to either fight or run. Breathing rate increases. Heart rate follows suit. Peripheral blood vessels in the skin, for instance, constrict. Central blood vessels around the vital organs dilate to flood them with oxygen and nutrients, and muscles are pumped with blood ready to react. Muscles, including those at the base of each hair, also become tighter, causing piloerection. Yeah, piloerection. Which
your hair to stand up.
Yeah, which quickly causes goosebumps. When a human's hair stands on end, it doesn't make much of a difference to their appearance, but for more. Okay.
It makes an animal look bigger.
It makes an animal look bigger. It doesn't do much for humans, but for whatever reason, we retain that ability. The fight or flight response begins in the amygdala, which I told you what that does. It controls your limbic system. It plays an important role in processing of emotions, including fear. When we're afraid, it sets off sophisticated, coordinated response in our brains and bodies. The amygdala is able to trigger activity in the hypothalamus, hypothalamus in the hippocampus, which activates the pituitary gland, which is where the nervous system meets the that's the hormone. I can't say that word. I never can.
Endocrine,
which is
endocrine system.
Yeah. Endocrine is dopamine. Man, I lost my place on here. Where'd it go?
It's after the word endocrine.
Yeah, I got it. Pituitary gland secretes ACTH hormone into the blood, blah, 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 blah. Sympathetic nervous system dilates the pupils to produce tunnel vision and reduce hearing. The hippocampus, which is a brain region that is dedicated to memory storage, basically just like says F you. Because it just shuts off everything that it thinks you don't need to assess a threat right then and there. So while senses are heightened, it's not an overall effect. The human body's wired to assess threats at a distance more than up close. Our hearing and vision become impaired, and logical thinking and memory are put on standby mode to allot more processing power to threat assessments. So the argument that being put into a fear state is going to make you more observational of these like paranormal things, kind of goes out the window a little bit because your memory is screwed up, your vision is impaired, your hearing is impaired, and your logical thinking is impaired. Now, when it comes to if there's a ghost in the room or whatever, you're going to be really good at assessing if it's a threat to you in that moment, but probably not so much as like it's going to attune you to it. Plus, something would have to scare you first to put you into that fear state. So after that first incident, you're just jumping at shadows at that point. So like the very first contact or very first incident might make sense to get you afraid. But I think we mostly come at it from the idea of going into things anxious, because usually if people are going to look for ghosts or things like that, they get kind of anxious in those situations. What?
Keep going.
Does music create emotional energy? Could that be the reason for ghostly music? In that UCLA study, they played different like types of music.
Ghostly music a thing?
Yeah,
Oh, I missed that one.
I hear that sometimes. In that UCLA study, they would do movies and music and stuff like that for people to find out what types of brainwave responses it would elicit, what types of emotional responses people would like self-identify with afterwards. So yeah, I think it definitely produces an emotional response in people, but I don't think it produces any more emotional energy, like in the sense that we are measuring emotional output. You were talking about dreams and the level of energy that they produce. I recently had a predictive dream about my grandma falling, which happened just hours after the dream. I get these a few times a year and hate them, but I wonder if those kinds of dreams would emit more energy. Could that be monitored?
You just have to sleep on an EEG every night and like trying to get it to coincide with. It's like me trying to film my sleep paralysis, which is an idea I've had a couple times, but I would have to know when I'm going to have sleep paralysis, or I would have to film myself literally every night.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like the lucid dreaming thing. Like you're supposed to do a journal before and like after sleeping every time and do certain checks. You have to get in the habit of doing the same thing every night. And actually that's the best way to do it too, or else you wouldn't have a baseline to compare for. Like if we just hooked you up to an EEG while you were having sleep paralysis, or we just hooked you up to an EEG while you were having those dreams, but we didn't have a baseline to compare it against, that data would be entirely useless. And to get a true baseline with something that is constantly changing, like the human body, like it would be really hard to get a baseline with you because your pain levels are so just different from day to day. Like your brain is constantly dealing with different levels of stimuli every single day. So whatever we record today for a normal day, which you're having kind of a high pain level day, your brain might show one thing. And then when you are having a lower pain level day, it'll show a completely different thing. But those are both normal states for you. It's not just emotional states that you'd have to watch out for. And so it would be so wild with dreaming too, because people have nightmares for random reasons, or people have like sex dreams for random reasons. And so it would just be this like roller coaster of data that you have to pull averages from. And then you would be wanting to look at the data from just one night and compare it to your baseline, which would be kind of crazy. Like you could glean information that way like that. So like you said, I think you would have to do it. It wouldn't be about knowing that it's coming, but you would have to do it you would have to do the exact same thing every night to pull data.
Yeah, so like the only way to measure, like if you think you're having like a predictive dream, the only way to measure that would literally be to like sleep with an EEG on every night.
Yeah. Which they're not as expensive as you would think. I
do a study. Tell us about it.
Yeah, we've got our EEG device, which is a Bluetooth device that hooks up to the computer for like $180 something. That was the one on the cheap end.
You said Bluetooth, like Oliver and Company.
Yes. There's more expensive ones though, where they're like dedicated. I want to get one of those eventually. They're about $1,000. If anybody wants to be our Secret Santa benefactor this year, that would be great. So we have determined that emotions do produce energy, just not a lot. We have determined that fear does change the way your senses work, and it does heighten them to an extent, but for the purposes of like heightening them to be able to see paranormal things, it might actually hinder you more than help, which is something we're always worried about. So that's one of the other reasons we always ask the questions we do, because it can kind of alter how you perceived an event.
Wouldn't you have to have to measure trends and average them to get a baseline?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what I said. I said you'd have to do it every night over a long period of time and then pull.
Well, and remember that the comments are behind.
Oh, did you? Did you remember?
Oh my God, you're so irritating.
So yes, your senses do get heightened. You might be able to notice different things, but the problem is your recall and recollection of that moment and your logic in that moment for cause and effect, things like that, are completely compromised.
So, like, once again, the only way to test this is to also catch it on video.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's why we are an observational type group. We try to be objective, because you cannot your personal experience isn't valid as evidence.
And there's just no way to measure that. Like, I think I saw proof. I think I saw a ghost. Okay, well, what am I going to do with that?
Yeah, I said evidence first. It is evidence. It's evidence that something happened. But it's not proof. Just because I think I saw something, like it's not even whether or not I trust the person telling me that. It's whether or not I trust that they know what they actually saw.
I don't.
I never do, because I don't even trust the things that I think I actually saw or heard. And unless you can document it as it's happening, unless you can find supporting evidence to that event, then it's not. I mean, even then it's not proof, but at least then it's correlating evidence. So yeah, that like panic state is real useful.
Can you describe the ghost you saw? It was ghostly.
Yeah, that is always. Yeah, how do you? People are always like, oh, it was kind of like clear.
It was wearing Victorian garb.
Or it was a shadow. Yeah, I saw a meme today. It was like, hey, put some thought into what you're wearing today, because if you die, that's your ghost outfit forever.
He was transparent.
How would you measure and document fear during an investigation? So
vital signs.
Yeah, the way we
asking.
Yeah. A lot of that is self-reporting. The way we would measure and document fear or any emotion during an investigation is our new procedure now is going in. You take all of our vitals. So that's blood pressure, that's heart rate, pulse. Heart
rate and pulse are the same thing.
Whatever. Blood pressure. You take all the vitals. You take temperature of the face, because when you become afraid or you have different emotions, like you'll flush, the temperature, the surface temperature on your face will change. So we do that with our thermal scanner.
Well, technically, if fear constricts peripheral vessels, you should cool externally. Just saying.
Okay. Yes.
Anyway, respiration, heart rate, blood pressure, temperature.
all that stuff. And then there's a pre-investigation column. There is a post-experience column, and then there is a post-investigation column. And then there are 37 emotions that you have to identify with. You rank them.
I don't think there's 37 emotions.
There are a lot of them are redundant or kind
there's
of.
only like 4. There's 4 emotions.
Yeah. So if you just ask somebody angry, you end up in these like really iffy things. So yeah, there's a lot of like redundant and overlapping ones, and it could become. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't become important later. It may be important later. Maybe the line that says aroused is the one that's always at 5 when people see a ghost. And you're like, oh, okay, boners bring ghosts. Who knows? I don't know. But I took all 37 emotions. I put them on there. You rank them 1 to 5 at the beginning of the investigation. Our procedure is when we're off doing the experiments or doing the live investigation, if you have an event, not I heard something on the tape recorder, not that, but like if you have an experience,
I felt a presence.
You feel like really creeped out, and you
if I
really
ever say I felt the presence, I've been kidnapped, y'all. I need help.
If you just suddenly feel like somebody's watching you for no reason, or you think you see a shadow that shouldn't be there, or something bumps you, just something that you think is a paranormal experience, you have to call in, you have to check in, whatever. Because that tags all of our video and everything, where we can, sync it up and go look at it. And B, we can call you back real quick to come take the survey, because your emotions could change.
Isn't there something we're missing about this, though? What? Like, okay, so something's going on, and you call and report it in instead of continuing to investigate.
Well,
I'm not so sure about the timeline on that one.
We'll have to figure it out. We're gonna try it this way first. We usually go in pairs, so one person can continue to investigate while one person can go back, or you can finish the session or whatever, and then immediately go back.
Just because it seems to me, if something's going on, the quickest way to end that, if we are going to get some sort of evidence, is have one person just leave the room. Just like screw up the setting or whatever where the things are happening.
And I thought about that too. And I think you should finish what you're doing. But like if we see a ghost, right, and it goes around the corner, and then you go around the corner to check, do you ever see the ghost again? No, it never happens. Sorry. Or if you hear the voice calling you and you stick around for 5 more minutes, do you ever hear it again? No, it never it's always like a one and done sort of thing. So I guess you stay and you try to debunk it real quick. And if you can't debunk it, then you need to come back, get your vitals checked. The other option is we all get like Fitbits for the vitals, and then when something happens, you record your vitals real quick, and then you sit there and you check off the states while it's with you. If we keep it with us, that's probably the most accurate way to do it. But usually you're in the middle of the dark.
Yeah.
So it makes it a little tough, and we don't really want to have a whole bunch of extra devices on, like putting it on our phone or something. But we'll try. It's no one else is doing it.
It was just a question.
No, and it's a valid question. Like I welcome valid questions. I don't know a way around it yet.
It feels a little like you think I'm questioning God.
You are
master of all.
The
Grand High Master of the universe.
The post-investigation one should be pretty easy, because that's just before we start packing up or whatever.
But that's what goes down.
Yeah. So we should do a post-pack up thing. So when everything went haywire after all the cameras were off, we can fill out our emotional states.
Yeah, Catherine says, can't you just write it down like an I had an invent survey? The problem is that do we trust that person to properly self-report?
Well, this is a self-reporting thing, because there's a
but
what
if
happened.
They come down and I I measure their heart rate, then there's 2 people who saw it,
right?
Which is inherently more trustworthy than one.
Yeah. Well, we're trying to do things.
It'll
like
be
officially.
a process. It'll be a process.
Yeah,
we'll do one thing. It'll work or it won't. We'll add another thing.
Well, and we're gonna have a chance here in a couple of weeks to test this out, especially with subjects, because we're gonna have people that aren't like in our group that are going to be investigating. We're going to be observing them, and we're gonna make them fill these things out. That way, it's not just us doing it. And it probably makes sense if not every person in the group is doing this at all times. Maybe certain people are designated to do this while other people are just designated observers of it, sort of thing. And then we like rotate out. But that does answer the question is like, how do you document that? And a lot of it is like self-documenting. And then what we'll do is we'll collect all these reports over a long period of time. And then we'll be able to pull like baseline results out of it. And then we can do a bunch of different things with it. We can categorize it by the types of experience you had and see if there's any correlation between the types of emotions people felt, or was everybody at exactly the same pulse rate when chairs get thrown or something
Catherine's
like that.
stepping on my turf.
What?
We're going to have to talk. We do need a nurse.
What are you now? What does that make you? Ghost hunter?
Yes.
Just okay, whatever.
Person of no status who records things.
Why do some people enjoy the feeling of fear and others do not?
I don't know.
Do you enjoy the feeling of fear?
It depends. It depends wildly.
I think it depends on if you're wearing Depends at the time.
Do I like fear? When I know I'm not going to die? Yeah.
So you only like it in a controlled setting.
If I'm driving down the highway and a car slams into my lane right in front of me, like what happened on the way home today, because 20 is the worst road on the planet. No, I don't like that feeling. But if I'm on a roller coaster, yeah, it's good. I like it.
There are two significant Okay, so they did a study on this. They took a bunch of people, made them afraid, asked them, did you like that? Did you not? I get that. That's how I imagine it's going.
You gotta have a creepy guy in a trench coat. Did you like that? Was this fun for you?
Did you like it when you were scared? And he puts his finger up their butt and he's like,
why? Why is that what you jump to?
Because that's how you check. That's how you check if somebody likes something.
Something is deeply wrong with you.
There are two significant factors that seem to influence this in most cases. One being the body's response to adrenaline. Depending on how the body responds can be the difference between the body interpreting it as pleasure or uncomfortable. The second is the brain's ability to override the hypothalamus quickly to determine if the threat needs to be responded to. People with a faster reaction speed can override the effects and enjoy temporary chemical benefits before the wear off. In some cases, fear states have been shown to produce high levels of oxytocin to counter the effects of the amygdala. If the body overproduces this chemical, the effect can be a temporary high.
It's cuddle hormone. It's just dumping cuddle hormone into your system.
So, like I said, the whole fear process is your body goes, oh, crap. And then it doesn't ask any questions. It just dumps all the stuff in there because there's no time to waste. It could be a cheetah.
Well, it's like endorphins with pain. It's just your body's way of kind of nullifying that. So
right. So the body's natural response is first fear. It just dumps everything into your body, gets you ready to have a boxing match with a kangaroo, and then the body's secondary responses goes, okay, let's make sure that was a threat, and then it like starts trying to logic and stuff like that. And if the hypothalamus decides it's not a threat, it goes, okay, we've got to reverse everything we did, and it's like 50 cc's of oxytocin to counter that.
I just wonder if being an adrenaline junkie is genetic.
It probably could be. I think it just means that you're addicted to oxytocin.
Yes, my mom's an adrenaline junkie. I just started out that way, and my daughter definitely. She was just born like that.
But some people's brains are able to override the logic thing a lot quicker, and so you can be afraid and it dumps all that stuff in your body, and then you go, no, I want the good stuff. And then your body dumps it in, and it dumps in so much that it overrides it, and then you ride it for a little while.
The problem is like any drug, eventually you need higher and higher stakes. Like, I can't just watch a horror movie anymore. It does nothing for me. I have to walk into traffic. But yeah, it's like any drug. You become immune to it over time, which is terrible.
Right. But some people watch horror movies and it's like a hug. Some people jump out of airplanes and it's like somebody giving them a back rub.
I think that's my next goal, is jumping out of an airplane, because I'm horrifically afraid of heights. So I feel like that would give me the high I want.
It might make your brain freaking explode. But that's why some people enjoy ghost hunting and horror movies and things like that. It's because they're broken and they need more hugs. It's because they weren't hugged enough. So.
Do not hug me.
This is a question I asked because I was like, this sounds interesting.
All these questions are questions you asked our group.
No, they're not.
People give me questions. You're just sitting there typing them yourself.
Do all species experience fear? What's your guess?
No.
Are you just saying that because you think it's a trick question?
All species?
Yeah. Do you think all living things experience fear?
No.
So far, medical science has shown that all species of animal feel and experience fear. This is excluding single-cell organisms.
Okay, well then, see, it was a trick question. Because you said all species.
Well, here's why it's a trick question, because I was thinking insects. I didn't think they had that part of their brain.
Well, they run from danger.
Yeah, well, that doesn't mean it's fear. That can just be
Real quick.
But newer studies are showing that even insects feel emotions of fear, anger, and empathy.
That's an interesting point, Catherine. Do adrenaline junkies perpetuate adrenaline junkies from the womb, like an adrenaline junkie dumps across the mom baby membrane? Like that. That's interesting. Is I wonder.
So if you give birth while bungee jumping.
Oh my God. So if you do a bunch of fear instigating things while you're pregnant and you enjoy it, much like if you do a bunch of heroin while you're pregnant, your baby will be born addicted. Does the same work for natural brain chemicals?
I don't know, maybe, possibly, because I mean, the only thing that's feeding that baby is whatever you stuff in your face and whatever hormones your woman's sac dumps.
So if you're
down
just
into there.
you just got your brain wired to horror movies and you're just enjoying it the whole time, is your kid just born a freak?
Yeah,
Like horror movies, mommy.
So you're probably hindering your child, doing the listening to classical music.
Oh yeah, you should just be terrifying that fetus.
You should just be standing in front of microwaves and just blasting it with heavy metal Satan rock and going to haunted houses.
Or in the case of 2021, Little Nas X, just
are anxiety and fear the same? Oh yeah, but. Yeah, so newer studies have shown that even insects feel not just fear, but anger and empathy.
That's interesting. Well, I don't remember why I was researching roaches, about how humans disgust them and they clean themselves after we touch them, and they make friends. Roaches can have friends. I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah. Are anxiety and fear the same? If not, what's the difference? Anxiety is a generalized response to an unknown threat or internal conflict, whereas fear is focused on known external danger. So, anxiety is just this, kind of turmoil, that, anticipation of fear. So if you have a lot of anxiety... And so it's kind of weird, because the way I read it was that people with a lot of anxiety don't like fear because they live in that place all the time.
I've also heard people with anxiety really like fear because it helps sort of nullify the effect. It gives them something else.
Well, I think it kind of snaps it off at the end, because I like fear. I don't like it right at the moment. I still flee or fight or flee. but I still go seek out those like like I still ghost hunt. I still
I
watch
don't like
horror
fear.
movies.
I like adrenaline.
Yeah.
But Catherine says, so spiders feel bad for scaring me. Oh, absolutely. Anytime you've ever murdered a spider, it was in the middle of feeling great empathy for scaring you, and you should feel bad for your murder.
Absolutely. Yeah, spiders are also the most judgmental of all the arachnids. You know, because they celebrate holidays. That's a well-known fact too. I think spiders celebrate Hanukkah and Easter and Passover. Yeah. And spiders are very judgmental.
Okay.
I'm so, you know, I joke a lot, but I am really excited about like the trying to take the next step on the emotional thing and in the brainwave thing. It's like, it's something we've wanted to do like for a while. Cause I think it'll start a lot of really good conversations, and I think it'll end a lot of really dumb conversations like really quick.
I'm
Like,
mostly concerned about ending the dumb conversations.
I'm interested what avenue like it ends up taking in the thought, or if it will catch on, kind of like some of the other stuff that we've been messing around with. A few things I want to do is I want to see like I want to measure emotional responses to, now that we know how to measure an emotional response like in a data sort of way. I want to measure emotional responses to infrasound, ultrasound, and see how that compares to like in the field events. I also want to measure these things like in lab settings, see what the baselines are, see what it's like when we're sleeping, things like that. Because I want to see how the external reacts to it. Because I think the coolest thing would be with us objectively observing these cases and trying to objectively gather this data. If we can also confirm that there's something physiologically going on with the people that are observing it at the same time, it could be really beneficial to kind of starting that discussion on why is that happening, or what is the mechanic, how is that happening. Because I could see emotional energy being, you know, some kind of catalyst for legitimate paranormal activity, but it is not the electrical output. It's not energy in the sense that we actually measure it. You don't put out electromagnetism by being more or less emotional with any of the emotions. You only produce different levels of electrical input output, which is actually used up by your body. So you could see, so we've been saying that, like, yes, emotions can produce energy, but you also have to remember that energy is immediately used up by your own body just standing there and assessing. Like, your brain's using that energy to think. Your muscles are using that energy to tense up and get ready to move. Your cells are using that energy to reproduce, run faster, things like that. Just because your body is producing more energy doesn't mean it's necessarily available for something else. But I mean, I feel like that could be turned on its head, because, like I said, I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm not a licensed doctor. I think there's more to be done with that, but I think at the very least we can log those things, and if we see a trend in it, then we have data that we can take to somebody and ask, hey, what does this mean, if anything? I think it would be really, really cool to find some kind of data trend in that, just like we did with mono wavelength photography, where we found a trend of I'm right about your orbs. To find a trend like with
I think you might be the most judgmental of all arachnids.
I am. And I have 6 legs, 8 legs, 8 legs. Arachnids have 8 legs.
Wow.
Insects have 6 legs.
Wow.
Arachnids.
You can't be judgmental if you don't know how many legs a spider has.
I know how many legs I have.
Okay. Okay.
What are your thoughts on it? I think it's some of the more exciting research that we've planned, but
I'm just interested to see where it goes. I don't have any strong feelings about it.
I see what you did there.
Ha.
So if you guys have any ideas to,
I'm more interested to see if we can log any sort of correlation between EVPs and people's mental states. But anyway,
correlate EVPs, to
like,
people.
people are anxious. We got more EVPs that day. Their brainwaves are all anxiety looking.
Okay.
Just see if any of that correlates, like almost like infrasound, like you're hearing the EVP but not hearing the EVP, and it's making you react.
But if we're recording it, then you know it's actually there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's I'm hoping we get that sort of correlation with everything. Like, so, if we get more photographs or like video of things moving on their own, it'd be interesting to see if the person observing or that was around when that particular thing happened had a specific emotion at the time it was happening, or their brainwaves were showing some kind of activity during the event. That would be really cool.
Julie says, could fear put off a pheromone that triggers an experience for those around us, like a group experience?
Well, there is that thing about, like, can animals smell fear? And that came up. It turns out animals can't actually smell fear. I think you do dump certain hormones into your bloodstream immediately, and so it might produce some kind of pheromone. But I do remember running across it. It was like I think it was specifically saying, can dogs smell fear or bees smell fear? There's
These are not the same things at all. Like,
there was some article I ran across where it was like, can this thing actually smell your fear? And like, I glanced through it and the answer was no. And I was like, yeah, duh. But I don't know that that's a universal truth for all things. So don't take me saying no as that. I just
never
read
take anything he says at face value.
It's a universal truth. Yeah, you probably shouldn't take anything I say as a universal truth. So we do have a few, like, man, I wish we kind of had like some more questions instead. Like, I do much better like when I'm answering things based on the things I read. I feel like I'm leaving a ton of stuff out. So a lot of the references I used were there's the UCLA study that I was probably incorrectly pulling all this data from. Was published in the 1980s. I'm sure if you look on Google Scholarly, you can find it. The David Hawkins thing, it's a book called Power versus Force. I'm still reading through that. I'm still in the very beginnings of it. It's interesting, but it's kind of hard to follow. And I ended up reading the like liner notes for that, and that's where I got a bunch of that stuff. I want to get deeper into that. So if anybody's read that or plans on reading that, please report back to me. I'd actually like to talk to you about it, because it's interesting what he did. And then he's got there's another book he wrote a bunch of books, by the way. There's another book about after that where it's like mapping the consciousness, and it sounds really hippy dippy, but there's a bunch of neuroscience in it. The dude was a neuroscientist, so it's not like completely just left field. I feel like I'm leaving so much out of there. So anyway, not this weekend, but next weekend, the 17th, I'll actually be doing a lecture out at the Tyler Paranormal Conference in Tyler, Texas. And I'll also be leading a paranormal investigation at one of the locations. Kristen will be with me. And then I think Kat, her and James got VIP tickets. They'll be out there. So I'm probably going to employ them while they're out there, even though they're technically paid guests. But there's like a VIP dinner, and then there's a whole bunch of lectures from a bunch of different people. I'll be emceeing, giving my own lecture, and then we'll be doing the paranormal investigation afterwards. That's pretty cool. And then we will be live streaming the weekend after that, because we will be having like a closed paranormal investigation experiment sort of thing. So that's super cool. And then I feel like there's something else we got going on, and I can't remember what it is. That's all I can think of right now. But anyway, yeah, so have a good weekend, even though it's Wednesday. Normally we do this on Thursdays, but be sure to have a good weekend. Stay safe. Don't get in any trouble that you can't talk your way out of, or at least afford the trespassing fine. I don't know. Can you think of anything? Any other questions? Anything like that?
Nope.
I feel like this was probably a boring episode, but I feel like there's also a lot of good information in here at the same time. I don't know. Sorry. I know you're. I know you're.
Thanks for watching.
I know your pain levels are high. So,
no, I'm just hungry.
Oh yeah. Maybe that's some of the other. Like, if you notice me getting skinnier, I'm not. It's actually just the screen's getting a little bit wider. Because I lost some weight, but I don't know. I can't think of. I really feel like
if it's important, we'll say it later.
Okay. All right, everybody have a excellent weekend, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.